HR department. I request all of you to welcome them with a round of applause. We'll start off. Vishal, who is a PGP2 student, wants to express his views, and we'll be starting off.
Good evening, my dear friends and honored professors. Before I begin my views on freedom of speech, I would like to begin with a short story. It's a funny story. When I was 8 years old, I used to think that short people are weak. So I used to fancy bullying them. One day I decided to do so, and despite all the protests from that guy, I persisted. Long story short, I ended up getting beaten up badly. And I learned a very valuable lesson that day. That if you're going to a fight, you should go prepared. Charlie Hebdo as an entity was famous for making fun of celebrities, presidents, and even religion. They were formed after its initial version, Harakiri, was shut down for mocking the death of a French president, Charles de Gaulle, in 1970. Ever since, they have been embroiled in various controversies over the years. And after the Prophet Muhammad incident, the French government had to shut down embassies in 20 countries. The incident which happened on 7th of Jan 2015 was the second terrorist attack. The first attack took place in 2011. And on that day, the main office was firebombed and the website was hacked. Granted that terrorists should not be forgiven because they take the lives of innocent people and children through their acts. But in this case, Charlie Hebdo was defaming a religious symbol. Now, religion might mean different things to different people, but Islam, especially, is used and abused by terrorists to brainwash and recruit young minds into jihad. They use religion to sustain this radical and fanatic concept. It's only child's play for them to turn an innocent mind against the artist who defamed Muhammad. If I were Charlie Hebdo, or if I were a part of Charlie Hebdo, I would have set up the defenses before venturing into such a territory. In short, I would have gone to the fight prepared. After looking at the facts objectively and closely, I've come to this conclusion that irrespective of who was right or who was wrong, and to what extent, such an attack was imminent, and Charlie Hebdo should have taken measures to protect its people. Their freedom of speech and their lack of foresight led to this disaster. However, there are some questions which remain unanswered for me. Is it right to make fun of someone's religion? Was Charlie Hebdo's business policy a marketing gimmick? And third question, and of course, last but not the least, who pulled the trigger? Was it the terrorist or was it Charlie Hebdo? Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. I will now invite Damien to give us a different perspective.
So, thank you, Vishal, for what you said. It was very good. Actually, in France, we have the freedom of rights. From the Declaration of Human Rights in France, which is part of the French Constitution, we have every man live and were born free and equal to rights, which means that you have the freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is a fundamental right in France, but there is some limits. You can't say whatever you want. You can say anything like this. You have to measure all your acts, all your powers. So, in the case of Charlie Hebdo, they were making fun, as you said, of all religions. Some religions are very tolerant, like Jewish people, like Christian people. They just blamed this attack. It was a small attack, but it was verbal attack. But with Islam, from the first caricatures Charlie Hebdo did, they had very strong answers. They sent a lot of threatening letters to Charlie Hebdo to advise them that they have to stop, they have to respect the Prophet Muhammad, they have to understand that the Islam religion is not enjoying this kind of fun and love of caricatures. So they didn't care about this threat, and they keep going on provoking every time. Like almost every month there were new caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad. For them it was just drawing, but it was like a vicious circle, and they keep going, and then it happens what happened last 7th of January. So in this case, I mean, the freedom of speech has huge limits. You can't hurt people, you can't harm people, you can say whatever you want. It's a duty to say what you want, what you think, but you have to respect people. And as far as I'm French and I'm really happy to enjoy this freedom of speech and to be able to say whatever I want, I must be respectful to everyone. I'm Christian, and I blame also Charlie Hebdo when they make some fun about the Pope, about Jesus, about all the Christian events. But I will never attack them. I can just blame it, and then it's their duty to understand the meaning of their words, of their drawings. And the thing is, for Charlie Hebdo, it became a business to attack people, to make these caricatures, to make fun. Because if you make fun, if you go far and you push people to react, people will buy your newspaper. And the journalist in France and in many countries like this wants to sell. It's a business. It's not about just giving information that it used to be at the beginning of the journalist history. It's just business. And this business is actually a business of men. There is some people who died, and there is 8 journalists from Charlie Hebdo, but there is also 4 policemen. And on the side of this event, there were a huge gathering in Paris and in all cities of France to commemorate the dead. But journalists spoke only about the other journalists who died. They forgot about the policemen. And all the people walking on the street were carrying placards saying, "I am Charlie." But most of the people were not Charlie. They actually don't read Charlie Hebdo because for them it's not their kind of opinion. It's not their opinion. They do not like their point of view, and they read it only sometime when there is some caricatures about Mahomet or the book because it's fun, and we'd like to have this kind of view. But I think, as for me, this event was the most, it was hypocrite people who came in the street because they wanted to show to everyone that, I'm blaming terrorist attack. But obviously everyone normal blames this kind of attack. But everybody on social networks, on the street, blame about what happened to Charlie Hebdo. But they forget that the main trouble was the terrorist attack and the terrorist threat. And we have to take care of this. And when you see that French democracy, like French European countries, even USA, who go in Africa to try to reestablish some democracy in some countries, but they do a lot of efforts in these countries like Mali, like Iraq, like Afghanistan, but they forget about their own countries and their own people. And it's a big trouble because this time it happened to France, but it could happen to UK, it could happen to US, it could happen to every country, and people don't measure the importance of these acts. So we all have to act together in order to keep in peace. We have to speak. If you don't like Mahomet, you have the right to be Christian, Jewish, Hindu, whatever you want. But you can't make fun of everything. You can laugh of everything, but you can't make fun. You have to stop the provocation. If people don't like it, you have to understand it and stop. If you have some threat, okay, you stop. If people encourage you, you have to let them go, let them do, and try to stop them. But you have to mostly be a man and speak about and think about the right of the other and the freedom of the other. I mean, freedom of speech, every freedom, freedom of move, all the freedoms have limits, and you have to respect all the limits of everyone.
Thank you, Vishal and Damian. I think that has set the context for the evening. Let me start with asking our professors, what is your take on the Charlie Hebdo attacks, on freedom of speech, how it has been threatened?
See, in this case, means anyone hurting others, other religion sentiment, I think that's wrong. Means even the freedom of speech and expression, it's not absolute. There are certain restrictions, right? So, in this case, I think it was overdone. Means the religious sentiment of one community was hurt to a great extent. So that's why. But again, should freedom of expression, should it result in violation of life? Means many people have lost their life. I think I don't buy that argument. Means yeah, some people are hurt, but again, should we take the life for that? I don't buy that argument. Means there should be some element of tolerance as well. Okay, both have overstepped the limit. Means that's how I'll take it. Means recently, means if you see, there is a news article which talks about a Tamil novelist, Perumal Murugan. Means if he has posted on his Facebook page that the author in him is dead. He will continue as an ordinary school teacher. So again, whereas means he had written a novel and he says that these things had happened 100 years ago. But unfortunately, some of the casteist group and religious groups are opposing that. So, and sometimes even in movies, you can't, means there are many casteist groups which opposes, means, see, they are talking about our community, or there are some religious groups which say that we should not be portrayed in such a way. So, these questions, again, these things raise an interesting question. Where are we heading towards? See, if freedom of speech and expression is curtailed, how do you think the knowledge will propagate, right? Means there should be different perspectives. Means let us have an argument and then, but unfortunately that's not happening. Means that's my take on that.
Okay, I thought this was meant to be a debate, is it, Vishal? Panel discussion, okay.
So later on we'll be opening up for questions.
Okay. See, let me say a lot of politically incorrect things. I'll probably overstep the limits and I hope I'll not be killed for that. I mean, see, first of all, in the context of Charlie Hebdo incident, event, attack, whatever you want to term it, by the way, BBC uses the term gunmen, not the terrorist. So, my first question is that let's say there were some guys who were offended by Charlie Hebdo, which was apparently doing it for business reasons, as Damian informed us. And I believe that he is more informed than most of us, so I'll go with his judgment. Although, as I understand, Charlie Hebdo was, I mean, to begin with, it was an extreme left newspaper which mocked, satired the businesses, the religion and capital, nationalities, patriotism, all these kind of, the rightist kind of behavior, philosophies. And eventually they turned into a business-driven newspaper for whatsoever reasons, obvious reasons. And probably one evidence of that for those who are uninitiated is that they fired one writer for mocking Jews. Okay, Jews are a strong business community, and they fired because they alleged that by mocking Jews, this writer is being anti-Semitic. But they fired, as in fired from the job, not fired with a gun, right? So my question is eventually that, first of all, is it right to, okay, we are free to disagree with each other, but is it right to disagree with a gun? That's first. Second, a lot of you, in fact, Vishal, Damien, and Pattu, all three of you mentioned that there is some limit. Where do you draw the line? Okay, this seems a very cliched question, but this is probably the most important question in today's date. Where do you draw the line? See, many of you would have names after gods. That offends me. Right? Okay. I know of a particular individual who asked a friend, I'll not name any of these, but this particular individual was a Vaishnavite. And he asked a colleague that the colleague was named after Shiva. So he asked him, can I call you by your surname instead of taking your name, because it's not right for me to take that name. Right? Now your name offends me. Will you change it for me? Because I'm deeply offended. Will you change it for me? No, I'm asking this question to you. You think this is idiotic, right? It is idiotic. But to a very religiously minded person, it might seem very alright. Yes. Second, I think, I didn't notice if Damien took the name of Prophet Muhammad or not, but Vishal did. But I think Vishal should be killed for it. Because he didn't say peace be upon him or SAW or Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam after that. You are supposed to say that. You have insulted him, seriously. Should I get you killed? Or rather, should I inform the equipped guys? Right? So the question is, where do we draw the line? I'll take it to even further ridiculous limit. There was a song in a movie of Govinda. And this is not the absurd part. The absurd part was that there was a song called Kahan Raja Bhoj, Kahan Gangu Teli. Now, Teli is a word which denotes a particular caste group. So this particular caste group went to the court and said, this is a very old phrase, right? Which there was an old king and there was a oil supplier, or I'm trying to roughly translate it. So Telis are basically dealing in oil business, not like the sheikhs, but lesser oils. So this particular Teli Mahasabha, All India Teli Mahasabha, went to the court and asked that this song should be changed. Now there was no, see, how do you change a word in a phrase? So they had to mute that. Every time it played, there was a beep. Okay. There was a movie of Shah Rukh Khan, which was Shah Rukh Khan and Irfan Khan and Lara Dutta, titled Billu Barber. So overnight there was a All India Barber Federation, which went to the court that it is not done, this is offending us. Fine, the court ordered, rather not the court ordered, the director producer settled out of court and said that we are dropping the term barber from the title. So the movie was released as Billu. Right? Now, actually, the question is, where do you draw the line again? Something or the other is bound to offend someone or other. For example, in a lot of your cases, some kind of names are given, and let's say there is a case in which the protagonist, who's, let's say for sake of a better example, the protagonist is a school teacher named Muhammad. Will you take an offense of that? Or should I, the writer of that case or the teacher of that case, be killed for teaching that case, choosing that case? If you think that this is an idiotic example, I'll give you the exact references and details, but a school teacher in Kerala was killed for this reason. That he had written a case in which the protagonist was a school teacher named Muhammad. He had given a example, a passage in his class 10th exam. And he was killed for that because it was insulting Muhammad. right? So when the question is, yes, there should be some curb, there should be some limit, but the question is, where do we draw the line? And if we start, honoring all such demands, what I was doing is, in Latin, is known as reductio ad absurdum, taking a logic to extreme absurd end. But this is what happens, right? And it is increasing because, if I entertain this person's demand, that person will think that my demand should also be met. And then somebody else will also be there who will think that I can extract maybe some financial or political mileage out of this, and I'll try to press that demand, and I will try to appropriate that mileage, that political points or financial points or something. In fact, many of these demands on bans on movies or songs erupt just a day or week before the release of the movie, because a lot of financial stakes are involved, and these guys can be blackmailed for shelling out 1 crore or 2. For some 100,000, some lakhs, some millions, they will have to shell out because they want to save maybe 100 millions, right? But that is a very dangerous trend. Tomorrow we can start asking that, see, since we are in IIM Indore, and the cases from Harvard should not be taught because, it offends us. Or cases from IIM Ahmedabad should not be taught because it offends us. Where will it stop? So, frankly, I trust that freedom of speech is absolute with just one caveat. And that one caveat is, if it is done with a malice, then probably, and who will prove that is a different question. I hope you have done your legal aspect of business course seriously. If not, go back to that. All the things that we teach are not so useless. So go back to the legal aspect of business course in order to answer that question. But I think freedom of speech is absolute. Freedom of expression is absolute. By the way, it is enshrined in the Indian Constitution also as one of the fundamental values and rights. So it is absolute, barring one caveat, that it is not done with an intent of malice, which is to be proven by the court of law with a proper investigation, rather than by some terrorist, a gun-toting terrorist, right? Second point, which I want to throw open to all of you, is that, okay, by the way, this point is not closed. This is also open. Where is the line? This is my opinion, right? You are free to express yourself. This respect and demand of respect and this freedom of expression, why is this so one way with Islam? I'm asking a very politically incorrect question. But why is this so one way with Islam? Sudhindra Kulkarni, notwithstanding whatever he's saying these days, had written an article about 2 years, 3 years back in Indian Express. Tolerance is a two-way street. Google that exact title, you will get it. In any of the Islamic countries, no rights of any kind of non-Islamic believers are respected. In 1972 or 82, 83 in Pakistan, one fine morning, General Ziaul Haq declared that Ahmadiyas are not Muslims anymore. So they have to give a separate declaration that they are not followers of Islam for filing a passport or getting any documents, nationality documents, etc. Saudi Arabia does not recognize anything except Wahhabist Sunni movement, Wahhabist Sunnis as Muslims. Iran does it other way around, right? So the question is, if you are demanding respect from me, shouldn't you respect me also? If you're demanding freedom from me, shouldn't you give me some freedom also? Why is this freedom with particularly Islam? Even in Israel, which is the only Jewish country and often criticized for their high-handed ways, has proper defense mechanisms, proper propagation mechanisms for Muslims. Palestine has no synagogues, no fire temples, no churches. I think there are some churches, sorry. But synagogues are not permitted in Palestine, right? So you are free to discuss, argue, dip in history, maybe other reasons and so on, but I close my case here.
So you just mentioned that it's very difficult for us to draw a line and rationalize about who, where to draw the line exactly. So how do you think that this impacts our future as students after going out of college and
As a citizen of India, you mean?
as a citizen of India?
If we tolerate this, pseudo respect of don't say this because somebody will get hurt, eventually we will all end up closing all our mouths. Will not be allowed to say anything because I just said Vishal has offended me, right? Many of us would be named after some guru of Sikhs. I mean, that is an offense, right? Because, well, casually we may abuse that name. So that is not done. So if we start tolerating this nonsense in the name of sensitivities, we are going to be completely a silent society, and silent societies do not progress. By the way, another thing, although this business of silencing the opinions or silencing the contrasting voices is going on for too long in India, it has become even more prominent and open in India in recent years. I don't have too much of idea about other countries, so I can't say. But apparently there are places in UK, like, if I'm recalling the name correctly, Bradford, and if somebody is around around that area, you may help. In Bradford, there are areas where non-Muslims are not permitted because it has become a Muslim majority place and they have taken almost all the properties and others are not safe. There are open signs warning others that this is a Sharia law area. Not officially from the British government, but British government just, tries to prevent anything bad from happening and protects the sensitivities, and therefore they just simply ignore it. Because if they do anything, they'll be labeled as Islamophobes. I think India is going the same road. And by the way, it's not only UK, it is apparently some pockets of France and Germany also. And if UK, France and Germany falls, I mean, these are the three biggest economies and civilizations of Europe. If these go down, Europe goes down to a great extent. No offense to other nationalities. My understanding is that, in India, the first book ban happened in 1923. But a lot of similar things would not, what has happened earlier may not be tolerated in today's date. For example, I'm sure that a movie like Gandhi must have not faced any agitation anywhere, but in today's date, if you make Richard Attenborough's Gandhi, which was made in 1982, today you'll face a lot of problems. In fact, when I watch the old movies, I often realize that, well, this is something offensive. For example, if you remember old Hindi movies, almost every Parsi is a caricatured, cartoonish character. It's a different matter that the biggest businessmen of India are Parsis, the most respected and biggest ones, right? But they are most caricatured ones. Shouldn't they take an offense on that? In today's date, probably they would. And my understanding is, if we don't stop this business, and by the way, yes, I was mentioning that first book ban happened in 1923. Go search about it. More than that, this is very much against the Indian idea of, Indians do not easily get offended. Not today's Indians. We don't understand India, we don't understand Indianness. India's dominant philosophical stream has always been that, okay, so if we differ in understanding of something, let's hold an open public debate. Those were known as Shastrarth. And if you want to know more about those, just maybe Google or maybe read some books about Mandan Mishra, Madhava, Shankaracharya. And you will get to know that Shastrarth was a very lively, open culture of debating, and debating to any extent possible. That was the real Indian culture. I don't know what these guys are trying to protect and from whom, but India does permit open debates much more than any other country perhaps, as far as I understand. By the way, I'm shivering from the cold, not from speech.
actually, I can't be as blunt as Siddharth. Might be, I teach HR, so I'm little polished. But one thing means what I means when I was at IIM Ahmedabad, some of the faculty members, right, means you will be considered as an intellectual. Means you should be from majority community, and you should critique majority community, and you should be always pro minority. Somehow I don't agree to this. See, you will be considered as an intellectual only if you take that stand. I think then where is freedom to express for the majority community people? One is this. And then Siddharth also spoke about banning books. See, it's not only from religious context, but also means when Jitendra Bhargava wrote a book about airlines, means Indian Airlines, it was banned. So what are we trying to say? So corruption happens at some place. If someone tries to bring that out, you are curtailing that. You are saying, please don't talk about this. Don't sell these sort of books in India. So then efficiency won't come in, right? Means whatever happens, it will continue happening. Means, for example, I would like to quote only one thing. Means at Air India, sorry, means I hope I'm not, means because you had mentioned that it's about PK and then what happened in France, but I would like to quote this. In Air India, they have that one policy, means the juniors cannot earn more than seniors. So many of the seniors, they won't work hard. What will happen is the seniors, they used to fly hard, and then they will earn more than seniors. Finally, you have to pay the seniors for that. Do you know that in 1 year they spent 400 crore rupees for this, stepping up the pay. So such things means if you curtail freedom and freedom of speech and expression, this is what will happen. Inefficiency will definitely creep in. This is my take. Yeah, I think it's open for discussion.
Considering that we are in an educational institution, I think it's very important that any kind of curtailing of freedom of speech, it also inhibits innovation. And we are in an educational institution, so definitely this will affect us immensely. So what would you say to the youth of India? How would you advise them?
By the way, just a small comment. Since you have mentioned that since we are in an educational institute and freedom of expression therefore should not be restricted, I'd like to point out two things. First, we do put a lot of bans, and second, you yourself also exercise a lot of undue caution, because well, the placements will be badly affected, the image will be badly affected, and so on and so forth. And also, I don't know whether I can name the committee or not, but I won't, on the safer side, but they do also put a lot of restrictions. Well, anyways.
I think I'd like to open the floor for questions. Any questions that any of you have? You can just raise your hands and we'll come to you.
Introduce yourself also with the program and your name.
I'm Parneet Singh from IPM2. Sir, the thing that you said about writers who support the minority groups are termed as intellectuals.
Yeah, it was there. Means that was the practice there. Fortunately, at least at IIM Indore, we don't have such pseudo-intellectuals. That's how I will define it. Yeah.
Sir, actually, this is not one of the problems of society. This crept in slowly because historically minority groups were exploited a lot. So whoever wanted to stand for them had to be of course, maybe highly intellectual.
In which country minority groups were we are talking about India?
Yes.
Okay, so in India, which minority groups were exploited? So don't throw broad generalizations. Be prepared. This is not a classroom. We are serious here. In India, minorities have been extraordinarily protected. For example, you cannot run a majority. Okay, let me name the religions. You cannot run a Hindu institution and propagate Hinduism, but you can run a Christian or a Muslim or a now Jain also institution and propagate that particular religion, no matter what the kid's religion is. In those schools, you can. In India, why this discrimination? I mean, why don't let everybody do that? right? So we try to protect minorities extraordinarily. Interestingly, no other minorities have such problems. Think about it why.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
No, I'm not trying to scare you.
I
That I do in class.
And one thing for you I wanted to say, sir, you were telling that France is also taking care to not offend the Muslims, but they are on the way of conventional Islamophobia because they have recently banned burqas in public places. France.
France did it long back, banning any religious symbols in public places or in official places like schools and offices. Recently, China has done this, that too in one particular province, that is the northwestern province of Xinjiang, which is a problem region. I don't want to say the two things in the same line, but it is the problem region because of high Muslim population.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. That's what.
Keep it close to your.
It's alright. I'm Anirudh. I'm from IPM second year. Now I'm an atheist. Okay, and we in India we have open display of religion everywhere. For example, even in IIM Indore, even though it's supposed to be technically it's supposed to be secular, but we still have an overbearance of Hindus, right? I mean that's the reality of the day. So in that context, what would you say about protecting religious minorities, say all over?
You read Times of India?
Not anymore.
Not anymore, but you did.
Yeah.
This question reflects that intellectual level. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to discourage you, but what do you mean by this? This place is overbearingly Hindu.
No, as in, I didn't see overbearingly Hindu. I meant in a demographic level that the people.
Okay. Have you ever checked the demographics?
No, but you get a
From
general
cat.
sense.
No. Check it from how many cat takers of different religions are there and how many make it to the place. Right? Interestingly, if you look at the two proportions, and you can get this proportion through RTI, right? The representative number on campus of Muslims is higher than the number of cat takers. Muslims, cat takers, proportionately. But since it's a problem of small numbers, we should not go by the proportions, right? But I'm really sad to notice that people still notice the religions here. At least this is one of those few places where we should not be noticing the religions. Now you understand how deep the rift and the divide is. Now you notice that it is inside you also. Right? Okay. Second thing. Some people have pointed out once long back that why are there two temples on the campus and no other religious structures, right? So FYI, this place was handed over by the government of India, and the temples are, one is approximately 100 years old or about to complete 100 years this year, and another one is about 50 years or so old. None of them were constructed by the public money. And since they existed, nobody demolished them, just like the other buildings of the place. And since they were revered in the surroundings, they have been honored in the same way, protected in the same way. None of their expenses are paid by the public money, which is received from different sources. Third thing, I doubt if IIM Indore is actually secular, or I doubt if IIM Indore is actually trying to prevent, protect, or propagate any particular religion except one. And I'll tell you the very interesting fact. A lot of celebrations happen on campus. Deepavali, Holi, and
Christmas.
Dashera or
Even Christmas for that matter.
Christmas or Durga Puja and Ganesh Utsav and Saraswati Puja and so on. So do you know where the funds come for that?
SAC.
It is SAC money, which is basically contribution by students. And it is possible that all of you have not given your written consent that it can be used for puja despite claiming atheism. By the way, atheists are, there is a stream of Hinduism which welcomes atheists also. So even if you choose to be atheist, you will still remain a Hindu. That's a problem with Hinduism. It is too open. Right? So even if you deny Hinduism, you still remain a Hindu. I don't know whether there's a solution or the problem.
I deny divinity, not Hinduism. There's a big difference. Religion is man-made.
We can argue that some other time. Okay. Yeah. Okay. See, the only festival for which, the only celebration of religious nature for which the money from public fund is released is, what is that called? Roza Kholne ka jo wo hota hai? Iftar party. After the Ramadan or Ramzan, the fast opening ceremony happens. That is the only festival in this place which is funded by the public money, right? So I don't know what kind of hypocritical system we are running. Why are we pampering one religion only? I think that should stop. Whosoever wishes to pay for that, in fact, your own SAC fund contribution should have a clause of this sort that it cannot be used for X, Y, Z or some other purposes. Right? You should be free for that. Maybe I hope somebody from SAC is there to take note of this. I don't know whether this is possible or not. See, my point is, we are walking an extra mile to protect the interests of that guy who is the most vocal. Right or wrong? I'm not saying that. Who's the most vocal? The guy who makes the loudest noise, thumps the chest most loudly, and always cries that, no, a foul, a foul. You know, nobody messes up with that guy, whether in a football field or in the political domain. And once you get that formula that by crying out loud, I can get whatever privileges, mileages I want, you'll always do that. Right? I mean, even in the classroom, we end up giving a bit more of marks to some guys out of fear that he'll come and eat my head. Same thing happens in political sphere. Okay, I'm coming out too strongly on perhaps the people who are asking. So next question will be answered definitely by Pattu.
Why someone should answer? Let us have a discussion.
Okay, good evening everyone. I would like to seek some clarification regarding the observation made regarding how the SAC funds are used to hold various festivities around the campus. My personal feeling is that when we do participate in a festival, it is more about collectively coming together with our friends and imbibing the festive spirit, rather than actually standing up for a larger propaganda. I think that goes mostly unnoticed. So in the same context, I think aren't we already pretty sensitive about this? Do we really need to observe this separately?
Pattu is willing to direct all the guns on me. See, I am absolutely fine with people coming together and celebrating. What I'm not fine with is using public monies for private or selective festivities. Right? I mean, we are very sensitive that public money should not be used for, let's say, a party of faculties. Why should it be used for any religious purposes? That is not public has given it for. And public is you. Right? And if it is done for one, do it for everyone, and in equal proportion, or maybe in proportion of their presence in demography or in campus. I don't know. Then we start getting on a thin ice. Second thing is, everybody is free to participate in those festivities from whomsoever those are funded, right? So in no way the funding part should affect the harmony or the lack of it ingrained in the different festivities. So I don't know how does that matter.
And I had another question. I had it.
You are in PGP 1 or 2?
Yeah, I will PGP one. I
That
need to
happens.
recollect the.
You recollect by then. So one of the questions which were raised after the attack happened was making fun of religion a good thing or a bad thing? Well, a few days back I was watching an episode from Simpsons, and I saw that they had made a lot of fun of Jesus Christ being America and making fun of Jesus in a show which is watched by millions of people, which has actually run for around 30 something seasons. I mean, there's a stark contrast between what happened in France and what's happening in USA. So could you shed some light upon that? Because the terrorist attack happened, we are questioning
Go on YouTube, search for Muhammad in South Park. You'll know what is the difference.
So may I make a addendum to his?
Now, that belief that in the USA that Christian, there's no sort of Christian terrorism
is completely wrong. They routinely shoot doctors who perform abortions because they believe it's against the sacrament of life. They blew up a federal building because they thought that the government is getting too un-Christian. So it's not like there isn't religious terrorism. But what happens is that in the world, it can't be denied that Islamic terrorism, regardless of whether the perpetrators do believe the original principles of Islam or not, the bulk of the terrorism in the world is Islamic terrorism, and that's what we see.
What is the question?
No, I'm just giving an addendum to his point. That that Jesus Christ, that there isn't any sort of that sort of thing. We have a Christian terrorist group even in Mizoram. It's not like there's no religion that's immune from radicalism.
There are some add-on questions perhaps.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Roman from France. I'm in PGP2. For me, so I will try to say my point of view, but I'm not a prophet, so I will try to do my best. For me, it's not about which religion we have to blame or which religion has a wrong attitude or something like that. Sorry if I hurt some people with my words. The problem is amalgamism. In French it's amalgam, but is it in English we can say amalgam also?
The word amalgam
I know only the word in French. So amalgam is a
Amalgam, yeah.
yeah, amalgam. Understand? Okay. For example, Charlie Hebdo in France used religion to make fun of terrorism. They use religion, and the truth is, they make amalgamism, and there are some problems in France, like Islam will be respected, and some question like Islam will be respected if we make amalgamism between Islam and terrorism.